Hello and welcome back to another episode of Focus on K-12, EdTech and the Education Experience. I'm your host, Doug Konopelko, Education Strategist at CDWG. Today, I talked to the Chief Technology Officer from Wake County Public Schools in North Carolina, Marlo Gaddis. She talks to us about what it's like to build a support system and some things they can help you with along the way. Let's dive in.
My name is Marlo Gaddis. I am the Chief Technology Officer here in Wake County Public Schools in Raleigh, North Carolina. I started out, I'm very proud of where I started out. I started out as a kindergarten teacher. I love kids. 3 years old, I knew I wanted to be a teacher. So from there, I was a kindergarten and first grade teacher for a while. Ended up going into found a love of technology early. Of course, that was when technology was starting because, I'm old. And so kind of found a love of that, became a tech facilitator right as they started, like the position was new as a whole. Went into curriculum and math, science, and social studies for a while, then came back to technology. And so have been in 4 different districts in the state of North Carolina, all different sizes, from small of 19 schools to now where I am, where we have 195. So done a good wide range of schools for sure, but super proud of my teaching roots and hope that no matter what I do, I always use that lens through my work.
Great. Well, first of all, just 195 schools you said, so probably not busy on the day to day, but
Never.
you've had some good stops there along the way. I sort of love, it's almost like poetic to start out as a kindergarten teacher, because when you're a student, you start out in kindergarten. So something really great about starting there. But you've had quite a few stops along the way to becoming, the CTO of this large school district. You mentioned staying true to those teaching roots. So can you give me maybe a couple examples or just a couple times where you feel like having that background in teaching has served you well in this current role?
Sure. So first of all, when you're a kindergarten teacher, you learn to be very, simple in communication, making sure people understand. Quite often we meet people in technology that we like to use big words and lots of acronyms, and then nobody understands what we're talking about. But coming from the teaching realm, especially the kindergarten realm, being able to look at something and break it down into smaller steps so that it's easier to digest for anybody at any level is super helpful. And it was a skill that you learn as you're teaching kindergarten, first grade, when you're teaching kids how to read or how to walk down the hall or how to do math. Being able to break things into a little bit of simpler steps so that people can understand that. I try to remember, although it's been a while since I've been in the classroom, I always try to remember the daily pressures that the teachers are going through and trying to figure out how we best support them. We don't always win, right? We don't always do it right, but we do try regularly to do that. Making sure that we have other educators in the department that are also doing a really great job. We have digital learning coordinators and our digital learning team and others who work directly with our teachers and our academics teams to kind of become the interpreters of technology and education, and making sure everybody's kind of on the same page and is using the same words and understands when we talk about things, how that relates to what they're doing in the classroom.
Yeah, I love the idea of, thinking about those daily pressures, right? Because as we sometimes build out these plans, especially at that high level, sometimes we forget that this is going to be implemented by people to other people, right? So we forget about what does the education experience look like for a teacher or a student, especially when we're thinking about rolling something out that will impact 180,000 students.
Right. Well, especially making sure people understand the why, right? Understanding why the decisions. We don't always like decisions that come down on us at any level, but understanding the why of that is really important.
The higher up you go, the lonelier it gets. So if I'm working at a high school, I started working at a large high school in Palm Beach County. there were 120 something other teachers that I could rely on that could be part of my support system as I was working through things. Then you become an assistant principal and there's 4 of you in a building, and then you're a principal and there's 1, right? So take me through a little bit, being that you are, where you are at that district. There is definitely only one chief technology officer for Wake County Schools. So what are some things that folks can do, right, as they find themselves getting into those roles where they look around and all of a sudden they say, I'm one of the only people here?
Sure. So, it comes down to intention, and really and truly understanding. It's really easy to stay in your district and in your 4 walls, and that happens at every level, right? It's just as easy for a teacher to say, and I think probably in my first years teaching, I probably did it as well, right? Nobody knows what I'm going through. We have the 4 walls of my room, and I think one of the funniest things that we go through as we move through education is every time you come up a level, you're like, oh, that's what's really happening. Oh, that's what's really happening. And every time you come up and you start to understand the balance. But as a chief technology officer, and this would be true for a chief academic officer, a superintendent, anybody at this level, it's super important that you're connecting with people in districts across the country. And it's great to do it in your state, even if you're the head of a charter school, right? You still need to connect with others, and find people who do that work. I'm very fortunate. I've been part of several groups, and you get connected through things like conferences, and you meet people. The first time when I came to Wake, I took a group of my staff to a national conference. It's the first time they had gotten to go to a national conference. And I told them, I said, I don't care what you learn. I want you to meet people. Take every opportunity to meet people, because those are the people when you leave are going to be the people you can reach out to when you need to solve a problem. I had one staff member who is still with me and who I adore, who literally took that word for word verbatim and met friends on the subway. So, it's always good to do that. But it's really important to connect with others. And so that way it does a couple things when you do that, right? One, you have an unbiased person or people or group that you can talk to about what you're going through. One, you're going to find out you're not the only person going through it. And 2, you're going to find solutions that you may not be able to find because you're so entrenched in the system that you're in that sometimes it's hard to see the forest for the trees. So sometimes having those outside perspectives is really helpful to be able to say, oh no, here's how we solved it. Or yes, no, trust me, we're going through this too. I can tell you there have been many a night where I have sent a text message or been on a call with a colleague across the country, and I think I've got it bad. And they'll say, oh, no. This is what happened to us today. And I was like, oh no, you win. This is yours. You can take that one.
Right. Here's how it could have been worse. And it was already today for us.
Yeah. So I think developing a support system, in our district and in many, a lot of folks use professional learning communities. Of course, in Wake, we call them professional learning teams, but same premise is the idea that teachers have a support system or like-minded. We have our librarians do a great job of forming some professional learning communities in our district. And it becomes because they're ones in their schools too, right? So finding a group of people that you can talk to that is a safe space, who can help you think through problems. It can't be all complaint and woe is me, but it's got to be productive. And there's got to be a little fun and humor and good times too, but you've got to be able to connect with others to solve that problem. So
absolutely. So I've got a 2-parter that will probably bring us right to the end. And that is, you mentioned some organizations that you feel like were helpful in developing that community. So maybe shout out a couple of those organizations for anybody who's listening or watching that wants to maybe is new to the role and wants to see what they can do. And then the second one would be, from either that core team or like your core support system, or from, one of those organizations? What's something great that you've learned and been able to implement along the way?
Sure. So organizations first. I'm a little biased on here, so I will have to say COSN, the Consortium for School Networking. I'm on their board, so full disclosure. But it was one of the first places I found my people. Found people who were like-minded, who were trying to do the same thing and solve the same problems, which is why I got so involved in COSN. So COSN's great. Come to our conference. I'm conference chair, one of the conference chairs again this year. So always excited about that. And it'll be in Nashville. So COSN's great. And we have a community online that people, once you're a member, you get access to, and you throw problems up there, and next thing you know, you got 12 answers for a problem that you were trying to solve. So that's really great. Another one of the ones that I really, that I adore, also, fortunately, I'm also on the advisory board for, is RTM. And they're a group that has pulled together a lot of great education leaders and CAOs, CTOs, superintendents, special educators, and they're kind of family. We end up at conferences, East Coast and West Coast. We get together, we catch up on each other's families, but at the same time, we're catching up on in each other's districts, finding out what's happening, solving problems. I've never gone to an RTM conference where I haven't immediately all of a sudden walked into a session. I'm like, no, that's what I needed to find out. That's the answer I needed. That's awesome. And so being able to have those kinds of conversations is really good. So what have I solved recently? I will say there is a group of CIOs and CTOs from across the country, some from that are COSN members, some that are part of the Great Council for Great City Schools, and others that just got pulled into the mix. But every Friday evening, in fact, I'm looking forward to it this evening, we get on a call, we rib each other, give each other a little grief, and then everybody comes with any kind of problems they're dealing with. And that can be anything from how do we solve video in the classroom during the pandemic? It can be how are you handling authentication and provisioning in your school district? Sometimes it's you're having a problem with a particular vendor, and how is anybody else having this issue? We actually have a text chat as well. Sometimes it's what are you paying for this? What am I paying for this? And being able to use each other to help leverage what's best for our districts. But every time I come, in fact, I'm bringing a new problem to them today that I'm hoping that they can, one, tell me I'm not alone, and two, tell me how they've been able to solve it. So it's a great time. And sometimes, honestly, sometimes I just listen, because it may not be a problem I have now, but sure enough, it's going to come up at some point in time.
You'll get there.
It'll come. It is fun sometimes when we'll get together and somebody will say, hey, I remember a couple of months ago, somebody was talking about this. Can we go back to that conversation? And very quickly we have those conversations. But it's how we learn. It's how we thrive. And quite honestly, in the last year, it's how most of us have survived the work. And so it's very important to find your people and be able to connect and learn. I think is probably one of my most favorite things about doing the work that I do.
Absolutely. Well, Marlo, time has flown by, and I want to thank you for being on today. Thank you for sharing a little bit about the support system and sharing your story. Anytime.
Thanks, Doug.
Thanks for joining us today on Focus on K-12 EdTech and the Education Experience. If you enjoyed today's show, please feel free to like, subscribe, and click the little bell so that you get notified whenever we post a new episode. Or reach out to me on Twitter @dconopelco. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time as we focus on K-12.